Welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm giving this classic Ercol 203 chair a complete makeover, taking it from this heavy dark varnish back to light wood. I'll show you step by step how I used paint stripper, a lot of sanding and finished it off with natural wax to bring out the wood grain. It's become my favourite reading chair and also a favourite with my furry friends. I've never used paint stripper before, so it seemed sensible to do the whole thing outside, and with the sanding as well I just thought it'd be easier to do it on the patio. So I bought this chair on eBay. I think it was £60 and the guy came and delivered it to the house. Technically it's an Ercol Windsor 252 because of the fleur-de-lis pattern on the backrest, but it's got the same silhouettes, same dimensions as the Ercol 203. The original varnish is in pretty bad state. It's already got scrapes and nicks and chipped in places. It still has the original Ercol blue sticker, which indicates it was manufactured between 1954 and 1976, I believe. I'm using this Bartoline paint stripper, which is water based. I think that means it's less harsh, easier to clean and less likely to peel my skin off. As with all of these things, you start off delicate and carefully, but didn't take long before I was just slapping it on. Also very important to use gloves and eye protection with paint stripper, which I forgot about initially. You need a good thick layer of the paint stripper. I think looking back that's the first thing I did slightly wrong. I was a little bit stingy with it. You really just need to layer it on thick. Watching this, I do not know why I didn't just turn the chair upside down. So instead I struggled to apply paint stripper to parts of the chair I couldn't see and couldn't reach, and ended up with paint stripper on my skin and my clothes and in my hair. So yes, if I was doing this again, I would turn the thing over. So once you've got a good thick layer of paint stripper all over the wood, you need to leave it for 1 hour and then pick up your scraping tools and hope for the best. It was sort of mixed feelings at this point. You could see it had worked quite well, on certain sections, and other places I was struggling to get even the first layer off. I think I just hadn't applied it thick enough, and also it was a weird day weather-wise. It was sunny, then cloudy, then windy, and I think some of the paint stripper had dried on. But it was weirdly satisfying to see the changes start so quickly. So these detailed carvings on the backrest were a lot trickier to get to. I had this sort of wire brush that I used gently. I was a bit tentative at first, I didn't want to damage it, so I was going quite gently. Bits of it were scraping off easily just where I had put on a little bit extra paint stripper by accident. So it was kind of encouraging, but also putting me off a little how slowly it was coming off. So then it was on with the second coat, and I went a lot thicker this time, especially where the wood was still the original dark brown. Then the sun decided to come out, and I was worried it was going to bake the paint stripper dry before it could do anything, so I moved everything around to a different part of the garden into the shade. So after an hour marinating in the shade, I got out the wire wool. It was a bit confusing on the back of the paint stripper. It said not to use steel wool, but you could use wire wool or something like that, and I didn't know there was a difference. So I gave it a little go, and it really worked. As soon as I started using it, the difference was pretty immediate. I'm not sure if there's a potential to damage the wood with this, to be honest. It looks fine, but I'm not sure. After starting kind of gently, I think the instant gratification got the better of me, and I just started scrubbing as hard as I could. It was really coming off quite quickly now. So after the second scraping, things are really starting to change colour, but there's still quite a lot of really dark bits on there. I was getting a little low on paint stripper, but I decided to do a third coat on the sections that were still pretty dark. So I really layered it on thick again this time, especially on the backrest, in amongst the details, and on the spindles. I was down to my last little dribble of paint stripper at this point. But I thought it would be enough. At this point it was starting to get a little dusky, and I had a couple of nosy little visitors come to take a look. I rushed to just put a final little blob on all the dark bits. So the sun was starting to go down. I didn't want to leave any of the paint stripper on overnight, so I went in again with the wire wool. It got another frantic scrub down and then hosed off, and honestly I was getting a bit worried here at just how orange it was looking underneath that dark varnish. I'd been hoping for a light modern look, and instead it was giving me 90s orange pine. I was a bit worried, so just crossed my fingers overnight and was pleasantly surprised. Once the wood had dried out, the colour really brightened. Okay, it still wasn't looking great, there was still loads of patchy bits with the dark varnish, but where the varnish had come off, it was starting to look really good.
Swear I won't forget this, why do I regret this? In my mind reckless, thoughts are feeling endless. Sitting up I'm breathless, anxiety's infectious. I feel so defenseless, betrayed and embarrassed. I hate being open, I hate being broken. I feel like an ocean filled up with emotion. Anger ain't a potion, rub it on like lotion. I can feel it soaking.
I was really tentative at first, a little nervous. A bit like getting your hair cut, you know. You take too much off and that's the end of it. But I soon got into it. So the oscillating tool did a really good job on any flat surfaces about a centimetre or more wide. Obviously getting in between the spindles was much tougher, but I had these sanding blocks. At this point, I felt the end was in sight. It was starting to really look how I'd hoped. So I think this is probably about 4 or 5 hours of sanding at this point. At this point I thought it was pretty much done, so I took it inside just to put it in situ and get an idea of how close it was to being finished. And although it was getting there, somehow when I took it inside it suddenly looked like there was a lot more work to do. Still plenty of little spots covered with the original stain. So it was out to the shops to buy another tub of paint stripper, and that evening I gave it another coat, another scrape down and another hose down. Of course it went bright orange again, but at least this time I knew it was just temporary. At this point, nearly all the dark stain had come off, just a few stubborn spots in those details of the backrest. I think this is an old paint scraper, so it just had a sharp enough edge to get in there and pull out the last little bits. So I went in for the night with it looking like a patchy mess, and just crossed my fingers that in the morning I'd be pleased with the results. And honestly, when I went out there that morning, I was so happy. I couldn't believe the colour of it was just perfect. Because it had no protection on it and I'd been washing it down, it had gone a little bit furry just where it had absorbed some water. So I gave it another light sand just to get rid of the hairs basically. Now, there were still some of these sections I just couldn't reach under the rubber chair supports, and honestly, at this point, for my own sanity, I decided that good was good enough. Nobody was ever going to see those once the cushion pad was on, so I moved on to finish the rest of the chair. So at this point, phase 2, the sanding, was finished, and it was looking really, really good, really smooth, beautiful colour, and so I admired it while watching my favourite YouTuber.
Tiny greenhouse. It was the size of a small vegetable bed with like a greenhouse foil, because it would make it really easy to access the plants inside. But I did really struggle to find cheap. I decided to make something like that, just really big.
The next day it was back outside with the chair, and I gave it a really, really good vacuum to get rid of any last dust before applying the new finish. So I decided to finish the chair with this natural wood wax. I'd already used it on a side table indoors, and I really liked the finish. For me, this was the part of the process I was most excited for. Finally see the grain come up with this beautiful sheen. It was very satisfying. So I took my time on this beautiful day to just potter on this final stage of the process and enjoy the project coming to an end. I applied a really liberal coat to the entire surface of the chair using a microfiber cloth. This is my first time doing any sort of furniture restoration. I'm not even sure if you can call it that, but it was a fun and satisfying project and a little bit scary after the first after the first coat of paint stripper, thinking I had ruined this chair. So it was time to put it in its final position and see if it really was finished. The next morning, when I had my coffee poured and sat down to read my book, it just felt perfect. It has pride of place right by the patio doors. Definitely my morning coffee spot. There's no back cushion at the moment, so for now I've just thrown over a sheepskin rug and a couple of cushions for a bit of comfort. But I do plan to order a back cushion, and in another video very soon I'm going to be reupholstering this seat pad and the new backrest. I'm not a huge fan of this dark grey. I don't think it can be the original. I reckon some previous owner at some point made this cushion, so while it's good for now, I have already got my sights on something a little bit more interesting for the long run. And I had a little visitor not long after finishing the chair who gave it the final seal of approval. That snoozy little face says it all.